Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
Hey y'all, this is part 3 of my ghost stories. In this part, I'm also going to be sharing other people's stories that I know, just because I think they're worth sharing. So one time when I was 12, I was at my friend's house and we were home alone and in her bedroom. She was on the far side of her room doing her makeup in the mirror, and I was sitting in front of her bedroom door on the carpet, and the door was open. So it was really quiet in the house. We didn't have anything on. And it's daytime, and all of a sudden I just got like this weird vibe. So I said to her, "Does it like feel weird to you in here?" And she was like, "Yeah, it does." Well, I had been taking selfies on my back camera because I had an iPhone 3GS, and I was using this app that automatically made everything like colorful. Like my eyes were really bright color. Everything was just colorful. So, it was whatever, and I just went to go take another picture. And I wish I had this picture so bad. It is, okay, hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. I took a picture, back camera. I can't see it, right? It takes a second to load, and I go to look at it. I'm just gonna use my door as an example. About this high up in the doorway, there was, like a mist, like a face. I remember it being sort of like wide, and there was two distinct like lighter like circular parts where the like eyes would be. And I really don't know really how else to describe it other than just like you could tell there were like misty eyes, and then just like a general overall head shape that was just like mist. And we believe that that was her uncle, who was a neo-Nazi, and he had died like a couple years before. We were pretty young when he died, and he was just, I mean, he went to prison. I'm trying to say, I mean, if the neo-Nazi part wasn't enough, he also had gone to prison. He had like an 88 tattoo on his neck that also like matched his initials, but you know, he did that on purpose. And so his vibe was weird. So we fully believed that that was him. I honestly do think that was him. I'm just so mad that I don't have the picture because I had like gotten a new phone, and it's been obviously like over a decade since then. So yeah, my mom had some things happen to her as a kid. And one of the things that happened at least a few times, I think, was suddenly she would start hearing people talking, and it wouldn't be just like how I'm talking right now. It would be like a bunch of voices whispering over each other. And she said that they would get louder and louder, and only she could hear them. And they would get so loud to the point where she would just be like, "Stop!" like frustrated, and they would stop. And she, because of this, like went and got tested for schizophrenia when she was an adult, and she does not have schizophrenia. But that fortunately has not happened to me. But yeah, that happened to her. And yeah, she actually still to this day will experience like a negative entity enter her room or something. She actually lives with me right now, and that's not happening to us. I don't know what it is with her, but that's happened to her a few times where like she can feel something, and it could be sleep paralysis. But she did say like the last time that happened, she could move. Like she wasn't even asleep, she was just trying to go to sleep, and she felt something enter the room, and she just like told it to fuck off, and it left eventually. So here at this house, the only thing that has happened is when I was starting to get into spirituality and like trying to meditate and, you know, have my crystals and everything. Well, there was a period of time where we would take our dog on a walk every single night, and we live on just like a loop. And over on that side of the neighborhood, there's this street light. Every time we walked by the street light, it would turn off. And that like area was really creepy to us at the time, so it was just like double like hell no. But yeah, like we even saw, you know, a car drive past it and it didn't turn off. Like I don't think it's like motion detected. It just like every time we'd walk by it or past it, it would just shut off. So one time I had asked it like, "Are you a spirit guide? And if you are, turn on." And it did. And it was still like creeping me out, so I had asked it one time, like it was creeping us out. So if it was a spirit guide, like I'm sorry, spirit guide, but when I asked it if it was a spirit guide and it turned on or off, whatever it was, I had said like on 3, so like 1, 2, 3, and it literally did. And I don't know, I just like couldn't tell. So I asked it to stop, and it literally has not done it since then. Well, at the same time that was occurring, every time my boyfriend would walk down the hallway, into the bathroom or like past his office into our room or whatever, his Xbox would turn on and you could hear it. Literally, like, this maybe went on for a week and a half at the most, but like once a day, you walk down the hallway and it would just turn on. And you couldn't even see it from the hallway, so yeah, I don't know. So now I'm gonna share a couple stories from my best friend Dez's house. They have like a 5-level house. And so when you enter the front door, you're on like the middle level, and then you go downstairs and there's a den, and then you can go down more stairs and you're in like the basement. Well, in this den, they had like a really big sectional, and it was just like everyone like slept down there all the time because it was really comfortable, but like sometimes it had like a weird vibe to it. And one time I was up in the kitchen and you can like see a little bit of the den from the fridge. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone down there, and I looked, didn't see anything. Like I just saw it out of my peripheral. And I literally went to go check to see if someone was down there, and no one was there. They apparently, I think, have seen something like peek around the corner of the sofa, like in the one of the corners of the room. And the story that they've told me that really gets me is one time Des and her younger sister Kirsten, who I'm also friends with, they were both sleeping on the couch, and Des was by Kirsten's feet, and so Kirsten's head is like further away. Anyways, Des wakes up in the middle of the night, and she just like sees the shadow cross the room, and suddenly Kirsten goes, "Did you see that?" So not only was Des awake randomly, Kirsten also woke up randomly and just like kind of knew that Des was awake. And they both saw this like fucking thing cross the room. One time their brother Alex had left his phone in the den on accident before he went to school, and he claimed that he had like closed out of all the apps. Well, Des had gotten home before anybody else, like in the middle of the day, and she could hear his phone playing music. Well, his phone was open on Pandora, playing music, and the song that was playing was Leave Me Alone. So I don't know if that like that song was a chance or whatever, but it shouldn't have been playing music. I think that's all that happened at that house. I took my coworker home one time, and she was telling me the story of her and her mom trying to, like, I don't know what they were trying to do, like who they were trying to contact on the Ouija board, but the Ouija board started saying that her mom's mom came through, and they were like kind of wary about it at first, but it was giving like the right information that they asked for. So they're kind of thinking like, you know, this is grandma, this is mom, whatever. And they had set a circle of salt around themselves in the Ouija board because they were both like spiritually inclined and knew to like protect themselves and all that. And at some point during the session, the Ouija board, it turned, whatever something it said, I don't remember, it turned bad, and the girl, my coworker, looked behind her, and the circle of salt had like a little break in it, like something just moved the salt. That's as far as I remember that story, but I remember thinking that was really creepy. Oh, kind of like back to my spirit guide situation that was going on. We had LED lights in our den. Like, me and my boyfriend were just chilling, and they were on a solid color, but suddenly it just started changing, and the remote was like underneath the couch and like sitting up, so it wasn't hitting anything, and it was just, I don't know, changing. But I think that was kind of like a good thing. I don't think that was, it wasn't creepy, but I do think that my spirit guides were trying to contact me, maybe.
Hello. So I'm sure that we have all seen the Audacity stitches that were kind of blowing up a couple months ago. And I just have a story that happened to me the other day that really made me want to tell my other stories. So I'm gonna start with what happened the other day. So I was sitting with my sister in her garage, and she was telling me about how she thinks that her house is haunted, and I've been saying that house was haunted since we were 12. And she was like, well, I'm starting to think so now. And so she goes to tell me about how she's just been having weird things around the house, like her grandma's blind, and she said one day that the doorbell was ringing, and then so my sister checked the cameras, and nobody had went to the door all day long. Nobody was at the door, nobody rung the doorbell. And then another time, the garage door, which is electric, it just opened on its own, and it can only open from my sister's car or the button inside of the garage, outside of the garage door. So she told me those things that happened. And then as she's telling me about this, we're sitting in the garage, and the garage door that goes into the house, the door starts jiggling and like trying to get opened. My sister goes to the garage door, 2 steps, 2 seconds, and opens the door. There's nothing there, and we're both just sitting there like mind boggled. So that kind of gave me PTSD from the house that we grew up in. Not my sister's house, but my mom's house, because my sister grew up with her grandma. So my mom's house that I grew up in was super haunted, and the door jiggling kind of gives me flashbacks to this one thing that I'm gonna start this off with. So I was probably like 14, 15. A little bit of context: the house was built in 1911, 1910, and we moved in 2011. So it was exactly 100 years old when we moved in. And at one point, it was built as a single-family house, and then at one point, it was changed into a duplex, and then it was changed back into a single-family house. So on the first floor, there was the living room. When you come in the front door, there was the living room, and then the dining room was kind of diagonal, and then there would be a hallway that led into the kitchen, and then the stairs would be right after the dining room, in between the dining room and the kitchen. And then in the kitchen, there would be a basement door, the back door, and my mom's bedroom. And then upstairs, there were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And so basically, I had the bigger bedroom because at this point, it was just me and my mom. Before then, I had the smaller room, which was horrifying. I never wanted to sleep in there, but we'll get to that. So I'm sitting in my room with my best friend, Alexis, and my bed is up against one of the closet doors because I had 2 closets. One closet went over the stairs and connected to the bathroom, so it was a shared closet, and you could get to the bathroom from that door. That closet always gave me the creeps. I always kept it locked from the bathroom and my bedroom because I had like a skeleton key. Like, this house was old. It really hadn't been upgraded much. Like, it had, of course, but not too much. The doorknobs and the locks were still original. So yeah, there was a skeleton key that I would use to lock myself upstairs. Or, you know, I was a teenager. If I wanted to not be around my mom, I would just lock myself upstairs. And she didn't come upstairs anyway because her bedroom was downstairs. But, yeah, so me and Alexis were sitting on my bed, which is against the closet door that leads to the bathroom. And, we're just sitting there, we're watching a movie, and the door starts, like, jiggling violently. And, like, something is trying to open the door, but it can't because, 1, it's locked, and 2, my bed is up against it. So me and Alexis are watching that happen. We freak the fuck out. We call my friend Kayla, and Kayla comes in through the side door, and she comes upstairs, and she helps us to safety. And there was nothing there, but that was, yeah, whatever happened to me and my sisters the other day really gave me PTSD to that. But I want to start now and tell you the first thing that ever happened to me. So like I said, when we first moved in the house, I had the smaller bedroom upstairs because my older cousin Sean had lived with us at the time. And that bedroom was horrifying. The first night that we had ever slept there, it was so bad. I was laying down in my room, and the room was not very big at all. There was like a laundry chute. Like, I'm telling you, this house was old. There was a laundry chute that was like a bench in that room that I would have all my stuff on. And that first night, there was still like a couple boxes and blankets on it. And I was just laying there listening to my Justin Bieber album. It was the Believe album, if you know, you know. And as fall comes on, I just remember this so vividly. As fall comes on, I can hear like a boom, 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 just like that in 2s. And I realize that it's coming from the laundry chute. I freak the fuck out. I go downstairs to my mom. My mom's like, oh, it's fine, just sleep with me. So I did. I slept with her. I slept with my mom for years, or I slept on her floor most of the time, in her bedroom, because like I did not want to be upstairs by myself. And the worst part about that house was that no adults ever had a single interaction with anything paranormal. Even my cousin, he's like, that house is not haunted, but that house is haunted. Every child or teenager that I had, like, you know, because I was a child when I grew up there, any friend that I had over had some type of ghost experience, whether it was just feeling like you were being watched, or a big thing was footsteps coming up those stairs. There would be big heavy footsteps, and that's what a lot of people heard. And some people would say that they saw apparitions. I only saw an apparition one time. That being said, I still felt it every single day. But the one time that I saw an apparition, I was laying on my bed. By this time, my cousin had moved out, and I had taken over his big room, the one that had the creepy closets that connected to the bathroom. So I'm sitting in my room. I'm just listening to music. At this point, I was probably like 13, 14. I was just sitting in my bed listening to music. I feel like I was doing my makeup. And then the lights went off. And from the corner of my room, my bed was like right here, and then my dresser was right here, and then in the opposite corner I could see like a little girl. She didn't look old. Like, I looked like I was taller than her. I was very much older than her. By this time I was like probably 14. I was older than her. I could very much tell that she was still a child, and I was a teenager at this point, but like in my mind she's a kid. You know how you are when you're 14, you think you're grown as fuck, but she was a kid. Like, I could tell that she was a kid. And she just looked at me, and she just kind of tilted her head, and then she said, "It's not safe." And I literally have chills right now thinking about this, because that's all she said. "It's not safe." And then the lights flickered again, the lights came back on, and she was gone. And then after that, my bedroom door just started boom, 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 pounding. Something was pounding at my bedroom door. Pounding, like, it shook the entire room. It was so terrifying. And then another time, I'm kind of jumping timelines because I'm just trying to shoot them all out. There were so many things that happened. The first time I ever had a sleepover at my house, this was like 2011. I was 11. Me and my friend Sierra were laying on the bed. I mean, not on the bed, on the couch, because we were in the living room. And at that time, we had like a recliner. I was just sitting on the couch. I didn't have the chair reclined. And then I just felt this like cold presence. And then Sierra said something. She said, "Did you feel that? It just got super cold." And she asked me for a blanket. And so the moment that she said that, I was just kind of like, it's the ghost. And when I said that, when I said the ghost, the front door did the same thing. Bang, 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 bang. Banging. Shook the entire house. Like, Sierra's freaking the fuck out. She wanted to go home. She called her mom. I can't remember if she did go home. I feel like she didn't. But, terrifying. And then when I was 15, I got a Ouija board. And, definitely things kind of picked up after that. But that's a story from a different time. If you guys want to hear that, I will absolutely tell it. But I'm running out of time, so that's all I'm going to put in this video. But yeah, growing up in that house was terrifying. And it's like, it didn't end at that house either. Things kind of follow me around, unfortunately. But yeah, hopefully it works this time. But this is the front of the house, and then the side, those stairs on the side would literally lead right up to the steps that led to the upstairs. This is the back with the creepy cellar door. That's our creepy back door. Here's the living room. And going into the dining room, like I said, it's kind of diagonal. And then there's another view of the dining room. We had like these huge French doors that weren't really up. These are the stairs, the creepy, terrifying stairs that everybody would hear the footsteps on. There's the kitchen with my mom's room off to the side right there. And then on the other side of the door would be the basement door, my mom's room. This is a creepy room in the basement. I mean, it really wasn't the room. It was just like kind of the family room, I guess, in the basement. But this room in the basement was terrifying. It was like another cellar. It was under the front porch. My mom kept all of our storage stuff in there and her couponing stuff. Here's the horrifying bathroom in the basement, and then this is the scary bathroom from upstairs. That's the smaller bedroom, and then that's the bigger bedroom, and then when you come up the stairs, that is the room that you first see. So yeah, hopefully this helps.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So this is my first TikTok. I've never posted, but I feel like I needed to get on this trend. And just a side note, I do talk with my hands. I'm very expressive with my hands. So if that's a problem and it's annoying, then just grow along, I guess. But I figured I'd just jump on this trend. So I grew up in Indiana and I ended up moving to a small town in Arkansas. My mom had bought a house for a very cheap price. And the house itself, it's a ranch style house, 4-bedroom, 2 baths, and it's on... it was built in the 80s, and the house itself is not haunted. It's only had a few odors, and they end up leaving or going in nursing homes. And but it wasn't haunted. It was in a decent area out in the country, and it's the land itself that's haunted. So a lot of things have happened. I mean, we were there for almost 13 years. So my mom just recently sold the house, but the first one is that we always see this woman, and she had a big poofy dress on, and she was wearing an apron. It looked like she had blood on her, and she was just very sullen. Like she didn't speak well. Like she didn't speak or anything. She would just smile at us, but she just always looked sad, and she would just walk around the house. And we named her Sarah. We don't know if that's her name exactly. We never tried to communicate with her, but we just knew that she was there, and we'd see her quite a bit in the kitchen. And we see her in our bedrooms as well. Like she would just stand there watching us as we sleep, kind of like our little protector, I guess you would say. So one of the bedrooms that we always felt like an eerie feeling. We were always uncomfortable. And all 4 of us kids, we tend to change up our bedrooms a lot. I don't know why. We just did it. My mom didn't care. And in this particular bedroom, all of us have had this one room because there was a bath connected to it. And so that's why we wanted the room. Well, a lot of us didn't stay long in that room. And at the end of my mom's stay, it actually just became a storage room because the house itself is pretty big and my mom didn't need it anymore, and she also hated going in there because it was very creepy. And we'd always see this man standing in the doorway between the bathroom and the bedroom, and he would just stare at us, and we'd just get super uncomfortable because it was just like an eerie feeling, and he didn't seem nice. Like the energy changed. And so needless to say, we didn't last long in those rooms, and in that particular room, and we'd always sleep with the light on. And even my mom, she ended up having that room at one point, and she hated it. And so she ended up switching to a different room. So that's why it became a storage unit, like a storage room at the end of my mom selling the house. And then we've had things like where the cabinets would open. We'd walk into the kitchen, all the cabinet doors would be open, and my mom would just be like, "Oh, it's one of you guys," and she'd blame my brothers or myself. And none of us, like, we're talking all the cabinets, front, the top, and the bottom, and we weren't gonna do anything like that. So we'd also have doors open. We'd have knives, the kitchen knives and stuff with the drawer with all that would be open. One time I was doing the dishes and I had my headphones in, and we had these exposed shelves and had cleaning products or whatever in the kitchen, and a glass bottle of apple cider vinegar actually flew out, and it flew across the room, and my mom just happened to be walking in, and then one of my brothers had heard it, and he walked in, and I had no idea what was going on. So they were trying to get my attention. I used to sleep on the couch sometimes. I just fall asleep and I feel like I feel someone. And the way my family is, we're out of sight, out of mind. So none of us actually really communicated about any of this, the experiences that we were having, until recently. And my mom added stuff to the house. We added like a barn, and we added we fixed up the fence, and we did a few things to it. And when we were digging holes and doing everything, we would find medicine bottles, like glass medicine bottles, and we would find the old-fashioned beer bottles, like maybe it was wine, whiskey, I don't know what it was. But we would lay the artifacts and we would put it on our kitchen windowsill overlooking the backyard. And one time my older brother, he was digging a hole in the yard, and we found this big metal ladle, and it was rusted and everything. And so we put it on the kitchen's windowsill, and I was gonna figure out how to get the rust off and try to bring it back to its glory. And within within that night, all of us were having nightmares. I kept on seeing a Confederate little, I say he's little, but he was maybe like 14, 16 years old. And he was making a pot of stew. It looked like he was making stew or something on the fire pit. And he's stirring, and as he looks up, he gets shot and he dies. And so it was the same dream nonstop for about a week. And then my brother was getting antsy. We were all getting antsy and very aggressive, and because we weren't sleeping. And I finally just told him why. And I was having these crazy dreams. And my brothers, they were all saying the same thing. My mom was like, we're having the same dream. Like, this kid was trying to communicate with us. So my brother got tired of it, and he threw the ladle across the road into the field, and it stopped after that. We didn't have any more issues. And so we've had some crazy stuff. Like, I've saged the house. We tried to get a priest to come in, and sometimes, like, when we'd go outside to let our dogs out at night, we would see and feel things. Like, we see like shadows and stuff like that. But again, we didn't know it, but we were super uncomfortable. And the dogs, all of them stayed close to the yard. They did not like being out at night. None of them ran off or like they would normally out during the day. And then my mom recently sold the house, and as she was grabbing the last of the boxes, she saw a Confederate soldier smoking a pipe, and he was leaning against the fireplace, and he smiled at her and just looked at her. And my mom just stopped in her tracks with the box, and she didn't know what to say. She was in awe of him, and he had like a handlebar mustache, and he was super tall. He just smiled at her, and he was a Confederate soldier, and then he disappeared. I have a few other stories, but those were like the prominent ones. Indiana, where I grew up, we had a lot of haunted houses, and we had some crazy stuff there too. I tend to attract them. And so yeah, if you guys want any more stories, just let me know.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8.
So I actually told this story last year, and I ended up deleting it because I was like, well, no one wants to hear my story of, my ghost story or monster story, and maybe I shouldn't talk about it. But after seeing like hundreds of videos where people talking about very personal and weird encounters, I thought I would share mine again. So mine, I didn't actually experience directly myself, but it's what my loved ones experienced around me that was connected to me through seeing something that was basically like my evil doppelganger. And so the first time was in 2011. My mom was in the hospital. She was dying from brain cancer, and she'd been in and out of the hospital, and this was a particularly long stay. Like, she'd already been in there like a couple of weeks. And so I went in. This is like the middle of the day in Oklahoma in probably July or the beginning of August. So it is not creepy time. But you go into the hospital, and especially in the unit where they're caring for people like my mom, and the lights are dimmed, and it's like kind of a very unreal experience. So I go to my mom's room, and I go into her room. It's dimly lit. There's like this one little yellowish orange lamp thing, and I go into her room, and she's asleep, or at least I thought she was asleep, but her eyes were closed, and she had her head turned like this to the side. And so me thinking that she's asleep, I'm like, Mom, I'm here. And I'm used to her being disoriented or a little bit out of it because of medications, but she like very slowly turned her head, and she looked at me, and she opened her eyes, and she just stared at me, and like with these big eyes, like I hadn't really seen that expression before. And I said, okay, she's still out of it from medication. I'm just going to stay right here, give her a little bit of time to adjust and, mentally wake up. And, she looks at me, and she just blinks at me, and she goes, "Is that you, Kathy?" And I'm like, "Yes, Mom, it's me." And she's like, "Is it really you?" And I'm like, "Mom, it's really me. Who else would it be?" She just stares at me for another second. She's like, "Someone that looked just like you just crawled out of the ceiling. She looked just like you and sat on my chest, and I couldn't breathe, and I was so scared. And she looked just like you. Are you sure that it's you?" And this broke my heart, and it made my blood run cold, because I'm thinking she's had a nightmare, something's going on, but I didn't know what to think of this. And so I'm like, Mom, that wasn't me. I would never do anything like that. I would never crawl out of the ceiling and sit on your chest. This is me, your oldest daughter. You know, I'm here. I would never hurt you. You must have had a nightmare, Mom. And she was like, okay, are you sure it's you? And I'm like, yes, it's me, Mom. And, you know, it's really hard hearing this conversation because she had basically like brain trauma caused dementia and loss of like mental function. But she was really scared. And, you know, so I went over there and I held her hand, and, you know, eventually she relaxed, but she would still keep on looking at me like, is this really my daughter? Is this a trick? Until she calmed down. And so, you know, I talked to the doctor afterwards, and he's like, it's common for patients who spend long time in the hospital to kind of lose their grip of reality because they're divorced from time and normal routine. And so hallucinations, and especially when you have brain cancer and you're on the medication she's on, are not uncommon. So I'm like, okay, because I was worried that maybe someone was abusing her in the hospital, and, you know, her brain had put together the image of this is like a monster or my doppelganger, or she had a nightmare, or she was having a bad reaction to her medication, but there were no signs of abuse, and, you know, she never brought it up again. Not that she didn't live that much long afterwards. But fast forward to maybe like 10 years later, and I've had a son. I'm living in another state. There's no connection to that hospital in Tulsa. And this is again in the summer. This was like July or August. And I tell my son, hey, you know, I know it's still light outside, but it's, you know, summer, so the day is long. You need to go get ready for bed. You need to put your pajamas on, you know, do all the stuff that a little kid will do. And so I sent him there, and there is a direct line of sight into his room from the living room. I can even see his bed because of where his bunk bed at the time was positioned. And so I'm doing stuff, half an hour passes, and I realize I haven't actually heard anything from him. Like, his room is silent. And I figure he's either goofing off or maybe he's fallen asleep. And so I go in there and I look for him, and he is on his bed, kind of huddled up like you would, protectively, like hunched over with his butt in the air, but his head is completely under his pillow with both arms clutching it over his head. And I'm like, what? I think he's playing hide and seek, because my son is really bad at playing hide and seek. He like would hide behind curtains and half his legs would be visible. That kind of bad at hide and seek. And so I'm like laughing, but I'm like, James, it's not time for hide and seek. You need to go to bed. You need to get ready. And he's like, Mom, is that you? And I'm like, yes, it's me. And he's like, she really scared me. And I'm like, he must have had a nightmare. I'm like, who, James? Who are you talking about? I'm like, Mom, she was really scary. She came out of the wall and she scared me. And I'm like, James, who are you talking about? What, did you have a bad dream? He's like, no, Mom, I was getting ready. And then this lady came out of the wall, and she looked just like you. She had your face, but she had the body of a spider. And everything just kind of froze for a second. Like, I didn't know what to think. Like, there was this sense of horror, like, what the hell, is something following me? But there wasn't fear. Like, I actually had this, like, wash of, like, I don't know, I see, like, rage, because there's all these emotions over losing my mom and seeing her experience in that, and then seeing my son being, like, terrified. And I can remember, like, I just stopped for a second, and I was like, I need to fix this. I need to make sure that he is not scared. So, you know, I started joking, and I was like, where is she? You tell her to come back. He's like, no, Mom, she's really scary. And I'm like, I don't care about any monsters. No one's going to be in my house and borrow my face, and they're not going to pay rent. They're going to do chores. And he was like, what, you can't? I was like, yeah, monsters can do chores. If she can climb through a wall, she can pick up dog poo, and we have 2 dogs. We have a bunch of poo. Or she can clean the bathroom. That's really gross. But Mommy, she's really scary. And I'm like, have you seen the toilet after your dad uses it? And so, you know, I got him laughing and, you know, kind of diffused the situation, kind of made it seem less real. But inside, like, my heart was just, like, pounding like a freight train. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to be right there in the living room, like, you know, 10 feet away. Now, you get ready, and, you know, I'll be back, whatever. And I was pretty sure at that time that he was going to, you know, play a joke and call me back and, you know, say that something was coming. So I was like prepared for him to be goofing around. But when it actually did happen, and I could hear him, he was laughing, he was not scared at the time. Mommy, she's back. It was like my body went into fight mode. I ran to the room, I grabbed a pair of kitchen shears on my way, and I jumped in the room and I was ready to fuck something up. I'm like, how fucking dare you terrorize my mom? How dare you terrorize my kid? If you're there and you have any kind of physicality, you're getting a pair of scissors to the face. And of course there wasn't anything there. I don't know what happened. You know, there's all these rational explanations, like maybe he saw anime, maybe he was asleep and had a nightmare. But, you know, I keep on hearing stories about evil doppelgangers, and this is twice that someone has told me that something with my face has climbed out of the ceiling or the wall and terrorized them. And so part of me is still waiting for a third time.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I've been seeing this girl all up and down my FYP, and when I tell you I stop for every single story, every single one, and I just want to participate before the trend gets way too stale and I can't do it anymore. So like a lot of other people, this isn't necessarily a ghost story, but a paranormal experience that I had. And growing up, I've always seen and heard a bunch of crazy shit. Like, you can even ask my siblings, like, I've been hearing and seeing shit. But this is one that will always stick with me till the end of my days. Before I preface the story, I do want to say that I believe America, as we know it today, is just a very haunted place for very obvious reasons because of the inception of this country. And I think that once you stain a land with blood, there are things that just happen, like echoes of trauma, cosmic, spiritual imbalance, whatever you want to call it, and I feel like that shit just hangs around. With that being said, please keep the comments as respectful as possible. I want people to be cognizant of the names that they throw out that might not be from your respective culture, because I don't like naming this particular experience because I'm not fully aware of what it could mean to whomever. And now we can get into the story. So after 8th grade, in the summer between 8th grade and 9th grade, starting high school, my mom decided that she was gonna like ship me off to youth camp to get rid of me for a few weeks out of the summer. This was when I was living in San Antonio, Texas, so I was part of the youth group at a church there that I'm just gonna keep anonymous. My mom forced us to go to youth group. It was like me and my brother, but at this time, like, I forgot what the reason was, but he wasn't going on the trip with me, so she forced me to go alone. I did not talk in this youth group. I maybe had like one friend. I was otherwise very silent, and I just didn't participate and do much with the other kids. For this trip, the youth group was going to Wyoming because the youth pastor's wife's father owned land up there and kind of hosted a camp thing, so that's where we were going. So we pack all of our shit onto a tour bus looking thing, and then we take off towards Wyoming. I love road trips, so I was very enthralled by the scenery on the trip up to Wyoming. Texas is a big ass state and it takes forever to get through, and then like I think we went through like Colorado or something. The scenery was beautiful. What I distinctly remember was when we got towards this spot in Wyoming, the scenery changed. Everything was green, and then I was seeing like this like harsh line in the trees where you would see like very green trees. I don't even remember what kind of trees they were. And then these like dead, brown, gross looking trees. When we pull into the campsite, it's basically nestled, it's like this ranch nestled between these two ridge lines. And you can see like around the site of the camp that we were going to be in, there was green trees, and like just beyond it is where those like dead brown trees were. And it was like really just like spooky looking. I don't even know how to explain it. The vibes were even off. And I wasn't the only one that noticed it, because I'm pretty sure one of the youth leaders, or maybe the youth pastor himself, asked about the trees. And then the guy that owned the property was talking about like there was like some kind of invasive beetle that was killing the trees in that area. And it was kind of like a blight that was spreading through that part of the nation in general. It was like some kind of beetle that like burrows into the bark, and it basically puts these little pinholes in the bark, and that's how you know that the tree is infected. Anyway, we unload all of our shit, and basically the way they set up this youth camp was like this weird gendered thing in which the girls got the cabin and the boys had to sleep in the tents outside, and we had to put up our own tents and do all this like roughin' and toughin' it shit. And then there's this ritual or routine or whatever that they do for the boys where they march them out into the woods as like a bonding experience with the youth pastor. So my little gay ass, I'm just like, oh great, I have to go do this shit with like a bunch of boys that I don't relate to. So I guess we're just marching into the woods. My gay black ass marching into the woods in the dead of night. Like, I'm gonna just let you picture that. By this time in my life, I had a very healthy, cautious fear of the dark, but I was like getting over it because it was like, you know, you're almost in high school. What the hell do you look like being scared of the dark? So I still wasn't really vibing with any of the boys, so I still like kind of like treaded behind most of them. So like the group was marching ahead and I was just like behind for most of the time. And then we got to a point where they stopped in a clearing and then the youth pastor tells like some kind of like spooky whatever story and everyone's supposed to like cut up and like digest that. As the youth pastor tells his story, it's getting darker and darker, and I'm just feeling hella uneasy, and I'm like looking into the darkness, like past the clearing of the woods, because I swear I'm like feeling and seeing things like move in the darkness, and I'm just tense. The youth pastor finishes his story, and I'm so checked out because I'm like peering off into the woods, feeling like very anxious. At this point, the sun has like long set, and it's like just enough moonlight to where you can barely see where you're going in the woods. I'm so zoned out, I didn't even realize the group got up and kept it pushing to circle back into the camp, like through the rest of their little trek through the woods. So I look around and I realize like, oh shit, I'm by myself. But then when I like turn, I see what I think is the youth pastor like waiting on me to get up. And I'm like, oh, he clocked that I'm like still back here being asocial. So I stand up from the rock that I was sitting on and then I like walk towards what I think is the youth pastor. And like the way he moved didn't feel right. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but like, you know how other human beings move, and this didn't move like that. And then it just like kind of turned away from me and walked into the woods and like disappeared into the shadow. I literally felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I was like, what the hell is going on in here on this day? And this next part is what like, I'm getting goosebumps even like, okay. At this point, I'm staring into the dark of the woods, hoping that it was the youth pastor and that he's going to come back and get me, because I have no idea which direction the group went in. I only know the direction that I came from. Mind you, this is all happening and it's like eerily quiet, and suddenly I start hearing this noise that sounds like when you hit like a hollow log, except it's like there's like a sporadic rhythm to it. The noise keeps repeating, and then I realize that it's coming from like up in the trees. So I look up and I'm like straining my eyes, and I can just about make out like a pale face completely like sunken in, just looking at me. And it starts getting lower and lower and closer to the point where I realize that it's like looking at me and studying me. I was fucking petrified. When I realized that that thing was looking at me just as much as I was looking at it, I stumbled backwards and its mouth just falls open and it lets out the most blood-curdling, like howling, screaming noise. And then the wind fucking picked up and starts ripping through the trees and making these sharp little whistle noises as it cuts through like those pinholes in the dead trees. It was the most unnerving noise I've ever heard in my life. The second that happened, I started screaming and I booked it to start running, and dead beetles literally start raining out of the fucking trees. I booked it into the vague direction of the camp until I saw the lights at the main house and just kept jetting towards the campsite. When I make it back to the campsite, all the boys are already back and the girls are there and they're having a campfire. I told one of the youth leaders what had happened, and the look on her face was like mortified, because mind you, I had not spoken all summer, and this was the first thing that I said to this woman. On my life, I will literally never set foot back in the state of Wyoming, like ever. And I damn sure have not been alone in the woods like that ever again. But yeah, that's my experience. I know this isn't my usual thing that I'm talking about, but my content is in the shop, so I figured I'd just do this while the trend is hot.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
So I really delayed on telling this story because I know it's going to be met with a bunch of like, you're a liar, you're making it up, whatever. And I can't handle that. It drives me insane. But it is a good one, and I have told it
plenty of times to my friends. It really happened. It really freaked me out. It was after my freshman year of college in a small town in the Midwest, Ohio specifically, my hometown. And all of my friends in my friend group at the time, we had like, you know, those summer jobs where it's like in between college and you're not really working a lot. So all we did kind of is drank and mess around with ghosts and paranormal stuff, because like what else can you do in a small town in Ohio? So that whole summer we were watching scary movies, we were going to like abandoned places, we were messing with it a lot. And maybe that is why, like, maybe I hallucinated at the time. This incident, I was by myself, because my brain was already in the whole paranormal, that whole summer, that's all we did. And there were some, like, minor incidents, like hearing noises at home when there's nothing there, like, stuff like that. We were playing with a Ouija board, and we used it we made our own on a pizza box, and we had a double shot glass. And everybody had one finger on it. That bitch moved. I was like, I'm done. I'm not playing this game. So anyways, I'm in paranormal mindset. I am at my friend's house. We were watching scary movies all night. And I go home to leave at like 4 o'clock in the morning after watching tons of scary movies. And as I'm driving home, on the right, there's like this big grassy field. It's where the young kids play football, like the young ones. That's like their little football practice field. And then on the other side is a river. And the road for this kind of goes around it. So like it hugs it, and then it goes around, and then it goes into more of like a populated area of town. I mean like street lights and stuff like this. The rest of it's like neighborhoods. So I'm driving along this field, and there is this massive dog, like huge black dog. And as I've retold the story, people have suggested like maybe it's a hellhound. It has been past the like omen of like I'm not gonna die, I hope, but because it's been 10 plus years. So anyways, there's this massive dog that is running at my vehicle. And then it gets to my vehicle and runs alongside it. I'm panicking. It's like 30 miles per hour. I'm driving like 25, 30 miles per hour, whatever, in town. So the dog's going fast. I think faster than what a dog normally should. It's running alongside my vehicle. And I'm like looking at it. Like I did a bunch of takes, like looking like, oh my God. And then when I get to the point of the road where it kind of like goes back out into town, and at that point, the field is in your rear view, because you hug it and then you go away from it. That's how the road goes. So I go away from it, and I'm looking in my rear view mirror because I'm trying to see like, well, maybe it's a dog that like somebody lost their dog. I don't know. I'm like trying to make sense of it. And I look in the rear view mirror, and it's in the middle of the field. There is this tall man, like really, really tall man. And I can't really make out any facial features. It kind of reminds me of like he had like a top hat on. And like when I say tall, I mean like it's got to be like 7 feet. I feel like he had like an overcoat on, like a suit. I don't know. I don't know exactly. My dumbass, looking back in hindsight, this is really like white girl scary movie behavior. But I needed to justify like what I saw with my own 2 eyes. Like I'm like, that has to be a man walking his dog, and his dog got off the leash. I don't know. So very, very quickly, and I wish I had a video of what I'm talking about, but I pull in the gas station. It's like right there. I want to say I'm not very good at distance, but like, I don't know, like 200 feet, not very far. So I turn around and I go back to double check to see and verify that it's just a man with his dog. They're both gone. I called my friend and I like was like, can I come back? So I went back over to their house, and yeah, that is my unbelievable ghost story. Second scariest thing to happen in my life. The other one was like a sleep paralysis event, which I know is a hallucination. So I hope. And that one, I actually described that to one of my friends, and they're like, "You saw the rake?" And I Google what like the rake is, and I saw the rake in my sleep paralysis, which was scary. But yeah, I don't know. You don't have to believe me, but that is the scariest thing to have ever happened to me by far.
Okay, so this was initially supposed to be a stitch with Audacitii, talking about, tell you about a dream that you don't actually think is a dream, but for some reason my audio is not working anytime I try to stitch it. So let's see if I can do it on here. So in 2017 my ex-boyfriend passed away, and it was unexpected, and I had begged and prayed and everything that you could think of, asking for a sign that he was okay, that he remembered me, that I think in that kind of time you're just so desperate for any kind of peace or clarity. I don't want to say closure because you're not really ready for the closure. It's so unexpected. But eventually I had a dream, and in the dream, let me back up for 1 second. He passed away. He was an addict, and the last time I had seen him, he did not look good. He didn't have good color in his skin, and his eyes weren't clear, and he had lost a lot of weight. And so I had a dream one night, and in the dream I ran into him at this carnival, and in the carnival so in this dream I had run into him at a carnival, and I was shocked to see him, and he looked so good. He had put some weight on, and his skin looked good, and his eyes were clear, and it was like the healthiest I'd seen him in so long. And I ran up to him in the dream, and I was like, "I can't believe you're here. What are you doing here?" And he was like, "Well, I don't really know." Like he wasn't really sure what he was doing. And I was like, "Okay, well, like, I'm so happy to see you. What do you, like, I can't believe this is real. I can't believe you're here." And I remember, like, touching him in the dream, and it was so, like, it didn't feel like a dream. It felt so real. And I started asking him, I was like, "Do you remember when we went to the river?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, do you remember when we had our first date?" And he said, "No." And I couldn't believe it, but I was like, "Okay, well, do you remember?" And I started going down the list of all my favorite memories with us. And he told me no, over and over. And I started to get upset. I started to cry in the dream. And so I started to get upset. And he said to me, "I'm not trying to make you upset, and I'm sorry that I don't remember anything." But, because I was like, "Well, why don't you remember anything? Like, do you remember me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I remember you. And so he said, "I'm sorry that I'm making you upset. I'm not trying to." And he said, "I don't remember my old life. That was my old body and in my old life." And he's like, "I remember you. I remember that we had a life together, and I know that I loved you so much." And he's like, that's all I know for certain. I know that I loved you, and I know that we had a beautiful life together. But I don't remember anything specific. I don't remember any details, but I know I loved you. I do know that." And he hugged me. And again, it was like, it didn't feel like a dream. It felt real. And in that moment, I woke up, and I remember, like, as I woke up, I still felt like his embrace. And that's when I was like, okay, yeah, he came to me. He came to me. And it was so much different than anything I could have expected, and even different than something that it was not what I would have asked for. I think it was more because I could have never, it was so profound, right? I just knew it wasn't a dream. I knew that he really came to me and was letting me know I am okay. And I don't remember the pain of my old life. I don't remember the struggles and the trials and tribulations that I had. I just heard the toy box dump out. I just, I don't remember the trials and tribulations. And for me, as much as it kind of broke my heart that he didn't remember details or specifics about the life that we had together, he wasn't in pain, and he didn't remember any of the pain that he had here on earth. So I know that wasn't a dream.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, I have never made a TikTok before, so bear with me. I just really thought this trend was great for something that I experienced a few years ago that I truly will never ever forget. So I was best friends with this girl for a lot of middle school, all of high school, after high school, long time. We are no longer friends, but this experience was something so crazy. So her and I both were in long-term, not great relationships. We both had them end around the same time. She ended up moving into her grandma's house and taking over the house while her grandma moved into somewhere that was smaller and easier for her to take care of. Of course, she wanted a roommate, and what better situation than two best friends living together, especially after the situations we both went through. So of course I agreed to move in. I had stayed there previously a bunch of times with her overnight, and her and I both slept on a mattress on the floor. And I did notice that when I would sleep there, almost every single time, around 3:30, I would feel kind of like a dip, like somebody was almost like getting in the bed with us. And I always just assumed I'm half awake, half asleep, I'm dreaming, imagining things, feeling things. Maybe she went to the bathroom, came back, whatever. I ended up asking her about it, though, after it happened a few times, and she said that she thought it was me and that she did feel it as well, but we both were like, you know what, whatever. It's an old house. There's all kinds of things going on. We're directly on the floor. It could be so many different things. Not too worried about it. She also had previously told me about a few weird things that had happened to her sister and her grandma when they lived there. But again, nothing that was like super alarming to me at the time, and I was just so excited to live with my best friend that I didn't really think anything of it. Fast forward to when I move in, and it was maybe a couple days after I moved in. I'm unpacking stuff, whatever. The room that I was staying in kind of always gave me a weird vibe, like kind of a creepy vibe, just a weird gut feeling. Kind of wish I had paid attention to that a little bit better than I did, because it would have helped me in the future for what was about to happen, but I didn't. So now you need to know this part to understand the whole story. So my grandma and grandpa lived across the street from this same house, which I also loved. It was easy to go say hi to them, all of that. Well, this particular day that I was in my room, I called my grandma because I could see their house out of my bedroom window. So I call my grandma and I say, oh, I can see your house. And she goes out on their porch and waves to me. And I'm like, oh, I can see you, wave to her, whatever. Happy as can be. Also, I am the only one in the house at this time. My roommate is at work and I know this. Nobody else is there. I locked all the doors because I'm overly paranoid, so nobody else could have been in the house at all. So I say bye to my grandma, hang up the phone. From here until the end of the story, I have no clue what happened. I am completely unaware of what is going on. My grandma has told me that what happened next was I picked up the phone, called her right back, screamed like at the top of my lungs, like something was wrong, into the phone for maybe 5 seconds, and then hung up. Now, mind you, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything that would make me black out or not know what I'm doing or remember what I'm doing. So I don't know why this ever happened. Obviously, my grandma is freaked out, so she drives over right away, tries to get in. Like I said, I locked all the doors because I'm alone, so she can't get in. So she calls my roommate's mom, and she says, I need to get in, tells her what happened. My roommate's mom rushes over, comes over, unlocks the door. They come up the stairs. As they're coming up the stairs, they're yelling and screaming my name, and I'm not hearing any of it. I'm not responding at all. Apparently, when they walked in, I was on the bed, but my knees down were just dangling off the end of the bed. So it literally was like I fell flat on my back onto the bed, which why would I ever do that? I wasn't tired. I wasn't taking a nap. I was over by the window. How did I get from the window to the bed? Like, none of this makes sense. It literally is like I fainted or passed out, but I don't remember any of that happening, and there's no reason for any of that to have happened. I remember waking up on the bed to them freaking out coming up the stairs, and I'm so confused as to why everyone's here, what the panic or the concern is for, and they tell me what happened, and I just about crapped my pants. So to this day, I have no idea what could have caused that. Assuming I got possessed for a few minutes there, don't know. Really freaking freaky. I don't like it at all. It gives me goosebumps and shivers every single time that I tell this story. But I will say that I did check my call log on my phone after all this happened, and it showed about an 8 to 10 second phone call for the second time to my grandma after I had spoken to her right before that. So that call was 100% real, and me screaming into the phone, 100% real. My grandma is not somebody that really believes in all that stuff or is into that, so she would not just say that to say it or make it up for any reason. And also it terrified her, so why would she do that in the first place? Don't know why I was an idiot and stayed for a few months longer after that in that house. I think I was literally in shock about what happened and in denial, but I never slept in that room ever again. I slept on the couch in the living room, and so did my roommate, because we both were terrified. But to end the story, we are no longer friends, because before she went on a vacation, everything was totally fine. We were getting along, we were having a great time. Little scared of the house, but having a great time. She comes back from vacation, her sister moves in, which is fine, no issues with that. She all of a sudden hates me, thinks that I'm the worst person ever, is saying awful things to me, treating me awful, kicks me out. And when I tell you there was no reason for this, I am so, dead serious. I didn't do anything to make her upset with me. I didn't talk about her. I didn't do anything to the house. I took care of the house while she was gone. Well, a little bit, because I was scared to go there by myself, but I still checked on it, made sure everything was good. All the things, nothing changed. All of a sudden, she hates me, is being awful to me, is being awful to my family and my grandma. Her mom starts being awful to me. Both of her sisters, who I were close with, start being awful to me. That whole family starts being just awful to me and saying the worst things ever. And I promise you, I did nothing to cause that or to bring that on. Don't know what happened there, but got out of there real quick. Never looked back since. Honestly, I think something maybe took over her that was already in that house, because clearly something took over me for a few minutes and then it got out. But for her, it was like her whole personality changed. I will never forget how confused and freaked out I was, but it was the best thing to ever happen to me that I got out of that house, because I think I might have stayed there longer because I was that much of an idiot and just enjoyed living with my best friend. But anyways, yeah, that's my story. If you believe it, great. If you don't, that's fine. I know it happened to me, and it will forever be the craziest story I think that I have ever been through in my life. Thanks for watching.
Okay, this happened to me a week ago. So I've just moved in to a new apartment flat sort of thing with my wife. Just to preface this, I also have a thing called phantasmophobia or something like that, where I have an irrational belief in ghosts and spirits, and it's either that I'm very, very in tune and like in touch with that thing, or I literally have like a mental disorder that like makes us really paranoid and hyper aware when I'm on my own, meaning that like I can't really be on my own without all of the lights on. I hate it, just feels weird. And I just feel like people are like watching us, or like there's a ghost somewhere or something like that. I always feel like someone's gonna like pull my hair from behind. It's just like a really, really weird, like awful feeling. So the other night, my wife is out doing the election coverage. I go in the bath, I keep all the lights on, and I'm like, right, I should really go to bed now. It's like 1 a.m. So I go to bed. I stay awake till about 3 because I'm like, I don't want to go to sleep. I start getting that sort of like in the back of my mind, it's like, you might not be alone. Like, it's just so annoying, and I can't like turn it off. So I always leave the light on. I left my bedside light on. I was like, look, it's fine. My bedside light's on there. I can put my laptop down here and I can just like go to sleep. So I drifted off to sleep at about 3 a.m. Now I hear the door going at about 6:30, and it like wakes us up out of my sleep. I wake up out of my sleep and it's pitch black. So I'm like, who turned off the lights? Because it wasn't me, because I would not do that, because I can't sleep with the lights off when I'm alone. I just hate it. I know I'm like an adult woman, but I hate it. So I called on the stairs. I'm like, hi babe, you alright? She's like, hi, just getting in. She's like hanging her keys up, hanging her coat. I'm like, have you been up and like turned off my bedside light? And she's like, oh no, I'm just getting in. So I'm like, oh my god. And like, even while I'm waiting upstairs for her to come up, I was just thinking, who turned off the light? Who turned off the light? Who turned off the light? And I'll never know who turned off the light, because obviously it wasn't me. And right, let's just say it was an electrical fault. Why does that never happen when I'm just like sitting, like watching my laptop or watching the TV? There's never just an electrical fault and everything like goes dark. That just doesn't happen unless all the electricity goes out. And like the landing light was still on. So that's one of my ghost stories. I feel like I have quite a few ghost stories, especially more recent ones, like in the past few years, which I will definitely tell because they're creepy and they're weird and I just can't explain them. And I don't know if I'm just like hypersensitive to like little things happening, or if it's actually like something happening, or if I'm just like a little bit like paranoid. So yeah, that is a creepy story that's like literally just happened to us, and it's just really, really weird. And like, I don't know what did it, who did it, what happened, like, yeah.
I've literally watched all the stitches to this video, but this story that I'm about to tell today, even though it happened years ago, still gives me chills, and I feel like it has a lot to do with why I quit my job. So I used to work in long-term care, for those of you that don't know, pretty much a nursing home. I was a certified nursing assistant out of high school. This was my first big girl job, okay? So when I first started, I didn't know a lot about the different types of shifts, but there's pretty much 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. I worked the 7 to 3, which was 7 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. As time went on, I slowly started to transition to 3 to 11 to work around my college courses. But every now and then I would pick up an 11 to 7 shift. It didn't take long before I started working there, where people were telling me about this one particular resident that had an issue with people of a certain color coming into his room. I didn't have too much interaction with this resident because, like I said, I only worked 7 to 3, and you didn't have to do a lot for him. Just go in and check on him and make sure he was okay. Bring him his food tray. Every now and then he might ask you for help to go to the bathroom, but that was about it. I had heard that this resident could get kind of nasty sometimes. I also heard that he had dementia, so he was like seeing stuff. And I also remember going in his room a couple times and seeing all of the mirrors in his room covered up. This is gonna come back later. So on my first 11 to 7, we'll call this nurse Patty. Patty pulled me aside and she was like, hey, this is the list of people, pretty much doing a report for when I first, clocked in, starting my shift. She told me who I had, who was total assist, which I had to do everything for, and who I could pretty much, let. So I noticed that this list had this certain patient's number on it, this certain resident's number on it. His room number was on there. But instead of it saying, just limited assistance or whatever, it was like total assist. So I asked, I'm like, I know I have him during the day and I just go in and check on him and make sure he's okay. If he rings the call light, I'll go in. But other than that, that's about it. When did he become a total assist? So she proceeds to tell me that the night before, he got so scared and so frantic
and thought something was in his room that he jumped out of his bed and fell on the floor and did something to his hip. So at this point, currently, he's a total assist, meaning I have to go in, I have to check on him, I have to do everything for him. I said, cool, no problem. I start doing my rounds, I start checking on my people, passing out ice water, changing people, as I normally do. Literally not even 15 minutes into my shift, his call light is on. I go in, I make sure everything's okay. As soon as I get in, I kid you not, this man is literally in the fetal position. I walk up to him and I ask him if everything's okay. Obviously, when I walk up to him, I'm very careful because like I stated before, he did not like people of my color coming into his room. During the day, he would make a big deal out of this. Like if he could get a nurse or a nursing assistant of a different color, he definitely would. He did not pay that any mind. He literally jumped straight into, they're in here, they're after me, please help me. I'm looking like, who is they? He's like, you don't see that little boy behind you? No, I can't say that I do, sir. So it took me literally 15 minutes, and by the grace of God, I was able to calm this man down. We're going to call him Mr. Johnson. After I calmed Mr. Johnson down, I left out of the room, and I went and did my rounds like usual. Literally, not even 10 minutes later, he's back on the call light. I said, okay, maybe he's got to go to the bathroom or something. I don't know. So I went in, checked. This time when I went in the room, I noticed that the room was extremely cold. Extremely cold. When I went in there earlier, it was not cold like that. Now, the nursing home, that nursing home in particular was a little colder on the graveyard shift. But when I tell you it was cold to the point where I could see my breath cold. At this point, not only is he in the fetal position, but he is also under the covers and he is also crying. So I walk up to him. I lift the cover up. I look under the cover. Again, he's sitting under there. We make immediate eye contact and he's like, help me, please help me. So I'm trying to calm him down because whatever he's seeing, I'm just not seeing it. So I'm like, Mr. Johnson, I'm going to need for you to cooperate with me. I'm going to need for you to tell me what's going on so I can better assist you and we can get through this shift together. At this point, I'm doing what I've been taught to do for somebody that's going through a dementia or Alzheimer's crisis, which is what I was told that he had. He calms down a little bit and he literally just starts talking. And when I tell you this got crazy quick, it got crazy quick. So he's telling me that when he was younger, about in his 20s or 30s, he was married to a young woman. We're going to call her Maggie. Him and Maggie had just bought a farm. It was literally just him and Maggie. And before you knew it, Maggie got pregnant. Back then, it literally wasn't uncommon to have people of color hired as help to help you on the farm, to help you raise kids, whatever the case may be. This was post-slavery, but people was very much still feeling entitled to doing whatever they wanted to do to people of color. So that's the time frame we in. He tells me that months go down the line, whatever. He goes and he wakes up early one morning. He sees that his wife is a little uncomfortable. She tells him like maybe the baby's coming or whatever. He doesn't think nothing of it. He goes out, get on his tractor, and he does his farmer work. He has a farm hand named Tommy. Tommy is a black man, okay? Around lunch, he's guessing is when his wife went into labor while he was still out in the field. His wife called her mother-in-law, which was Mr. Johnson's mom, her sister-in-law, and his brothers came as well. Everybody's making sure that everything's going okay. The baby is finally born at some point. When the baby is born, I guess everybody in the room looked around at each other and realized that this baby was not in no way, shape, or form white. The brothers immediately take the baby and they go outside. His mom sits there with her and they go. They snatch this baby and they take the baby outside. Meanwhile, all this is going on. Him and Tommy are still out in the field. They took this baby out into a body of water. And I will not be saying what they did to this baby, but you can only imagine for the time period. Him and Tommy finally wrap up their work for the day and he heads back to the house. When he gets inside the house, he sees his wife sitting there with his mother. His wife is crying. His mom's just sitting there irritated and pissed off. He asks what's going on, and that's when she gives him the whole rundown that your wife was pretty much sleeping with your field hand, and this is the situation that you're in. So he asks, where's the baby? And the mom says, your brother's taking care of it. Don't worry about it. You need to figure out what you're going to do with her. Meanwhile, this is going on. His brothers have went and got Tommy out of the field. The things that they did to Tommy, again, I cannot describe it here on TikTok, but just imagine the torture and everything that he went through. They literally just left him there in that field. They left him there in the middle of the field. This man proceeds to tell me that when he finally figures out what happened and what his brothers did, they literally acted like nothing ever happened. And every night, Tommy and his son will come and visit him like clockwork. At this point, when I tell you the chills are running up my spine, literally every hair on my body is sticking up. I don't know what to say. I'm like, when they say frozen in fear, I was frozen in fear.
Because it's like, as soon as he told me that story, I could pick up on what was in the room. Before, I couldn't pick up on what it was, but I could immediately feel something else in the room with us. After he told me the story, I finally got him to calm down and he went to sleep. He slept for literally a couple hours, and at this point, we're at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like clockwork, he hits that call light again. I go back in. I remember walking into the room and all of the sheets were taken off of the mirrors, which I thought was very strange because he wanted his mirrors covered up for a reason. I went over to Mr. Johnson and I touched him to make sure that he was okay, and this man was ice cold. He had died. As I went to leave the room to go contact a nurse, oh my God, I'm getting chills. I'm literally passing by this mirror, and as I'm headed out, on my left is the mirror. I turn and look in the mirror, and behind me, to the far wall of Mr. Johnson's room, I see a taller figure, and I see a shorter figure standing beside this taller figure that I would say is probably about the height of a 5-year-old child. I have never seen nothing like that in my life, ever. And I cannot explain the amount of fear that ran through my body, but I got out of that room so quick, I will tell you that. The crazy part is that when the nurse came in, we could not understand how these mirrors got uncovered. Even the one in the bathroom was uncovered. The one in his room was uncovered. Again, this is a man that just hurt his hip yesterday. There's no reason why he should have been out of bed taking these blankets off this mirror, and I know he wouldn't have done it anyway. Also, the fact that she felt like he had been dead for longer than I said he had. But again, I had just talked to Mr. Johnson. I had literally just talked to him. So I don't understand how a dead man talks, but maybe y'all can let me know. And when I tell you, baby, I only lasted 3 more days after that. I didn't sleep for days. I said, I'm not coming back. Y'all ain't gotta worry. Good morning. Since you all enjoyed my story yesterday so much, I decided I would tell some more. Because like I said, I worked in long-term care facility for a while, so I have stories for days. Unfortunately, just a little warning, I don't have any story that's going to top what I told yesterday. I told my best story first. But I would like to clarify that everything that I say is 100% true and nothing is a figment of my imagination, even though I really, really wish it was. Just a little history on me that's going to later pertain to this story. I'm a mom of 2. I have a son and a daughter. I have a 3-year-old daughter that has a heart condition. So it's the peak of COVID. I'm about 5 to 6 months pregnant, and I'm working the night shift again, 11 to 7. At this time, I'm working for an agency, so this agency sends me to different facilities every shift instead of just going to the same facility all the time. This facility that I went to this particular night, I had never been to before. When I walk in, the CNA that's leaving gives me a report, and she tells me everything about my residents, everything I need to know, who's total assist and who's limited assistance. She tells me about this one resident that I have, and the way that the list normally goes is that you have room numbers at least adjacent to each other. So for example, if you have room 11, usually have room 12 across the hall, room 13 across the hall, depending on how the facility is set up. I literally had 9, 10, 11, and 16. 16 was all the way at the end of the hall. That was this resident at the end of the hall in room 16. This resident was at the end of the hall, and she was also in the room all by herself. She proceeds to tell me that when I go in this room, do not tell this resident anything about myself. If she asks anything personal, change the subject or lie. I said, okay. I mean, she goes on to tell me that this resident believes that she is the reincarnation of Jesus Christ himself. Not the craziest thing I've heard, but strange nonetheless. So I start my rounds, working from my first room all the way down to the end. Like I said, she's room 16. Again, I'm 6 months pregnant, so I'm probably moving a little slow. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I finally get down there to her room, and this CNA that was helping me out pretty much my whole shift, she comes with me. She said, don't go in there by yourself. She comes in there with me. The resident wanted us to help her find her remote because this resident was also blind. When I go to hand her the remote, she grabs my hand. She looks at me and she asks me what my name is. Again, the CNA told me not to tell her anything personal, so I lied and I told her that my name was Ashley. She kind of smirks. She takes the remote and she says, okay, ladies, that's all I need right now. I said, okay, easy enough. This is going to be an easy night. This is going to be a breeze. I go finish up the rest of my round, and by the time I finish up the rest of my round, her call light is on again. So I make my way down to the end of the hall. The nurse aide, she comes with me again this time. This resident was bedbound, but she could use a bedpan. She didn't want to use a brief or anything like that. At the time, we didn't have a bedpan in the room, so the CNA actually had to leave to go get a bedpan out of the supply closet. So I'm just standing there kind of waiting for the other CNA to come back. And the resident starts reciting Galatians 6 and 9. For let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. What's so interesting about this scripture is that that's literally my favorite scripture. After she says that, she looks over at me. I'm standing by the door at this point. And she asks me if I believe. I tell her, well, it depends on what we're talking about believing in. She says, do you believe in Jesus Christ? I said, yes, ma'am, I do. So she tells me, I'm the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. So anything you do to me shall be done unto you. At this point, I'm like, where's this girl with this bedpan? I wrap it up. We get on the bedpan, get everything taken care of. I leave. I go out into the little staffed area, and I go eat me some snacks and drink me something, and I'm just chilling watching Netflix. About an hour or so later, her call light goes back off. At this point, the other CNA has went outside to take a smoke break. Instead of me making a huge big deal out of it, I just went down there by myself. I'm like, she probably doesn't even need anything. I go in her room, and all the lights are off at this point. Her lights weren't off the whole shift. Like I said, it doesn't really matter because she was blind, but the lights were off. She was literally sitting in the dark. I go to reach my hand on the wall to cut the light on, and she tells me to leave them off. I say, okay. So I go over to her to see what she needs. She turns over and she looks at me, and she says, Brittany, you're pregnant, aren't you? Excuse me? I didn't say anything. Didn't say anything. She says, you're pregnant with a little girl. That's so sweet. Too bad your baby has a broken heart. Where's your God now? This is information nobody knew except for me, her father, and my close relatives. And when I tell you to this day, I still don't understand how that woman knew such intimate details about myself when I never told her nothing like that. Never told her nothing like that. Y'all already know what I did. Called up my recruiter. Yes, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I told her that I will no longer be returning to this facility. I'm going to finish my shift out. Do not send me back here. And I meant every word that I said.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
So this happened about a year ago, and honestly, this sent me like spiraling into a hole, and I had so many questions about like the afterlife, and just made me realize that there's more to ghosts being out there. But basically, there was this one night I went to sleep, had no real intentions, didn't really try to focus on anything, just went to bed. And I ended up waking up in a dream, and in this dream, I'm in a moving vehicle, and I'm looking around, and I see that there's like teenage girls, and I can hear the conversation, and they're basically so excited, and they're sitting right next to me. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But they're basically driving to a party, and I'm looking around, and I can see the girls are sitting next to me, and they're like super into their conversation. And you know how in the back you have like 3 seats? Well, the friend was in the middle, and then the other friend was on the other side. And then their best friend, I think, it seemed like they were all best friends kind of, was sitting in the passenger seat, and her mother was driving. So they're talking about this party, they're super excited, they're on the way, and I'm just kind of looking around at them, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, that's cool. Didn't think much of it. I'm just chilling in the car with them, and I'm looking at the window, and we're cruising, when all of a sudden I hear, and I turn around, and these girls are all up on each other, like, we're very close to the door, scared, like this, just staring at me, and I'm looking at them, and they're just staring at me, and I'm like, what? And it's like not processing to me yet. And then the best friend that was sitting in the passenger seat, she realizes that her friends are quiet. They're no longer engaging in the conversation. So she turns around and she's like, what are you guys doing? And she sees her friends, and they're all like this in the corner, like a leg is up and everything. I remember it vividly. And she looks over at the other side of the seat, which is where I was. She sees me and starts screaming. They're all screaming at this point. I look down and I'm like, oh, they can see me. And I can see myself. I'm like kind of see-through-ish. And the mother's yelling. She's like, what's happening? What's happening? And they're like, there's a girl. There's a girl. And I just remember that moment, I like woke up and I snapped out of it. And until this day, I just think about it. And I'm like, that's crazy. I was literally somewhere else. And I was the ghost in this story. There wasn't anybody that I seen. I was the ghost. I was see-through. I saw myself. I could see through myself. And it's just crazy. And it's made me believe that maybe not all ghosts out there are actually ghosts. Maybe some of them are just people that are walking among us that are actually alive.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Okay, this is my second attempt at trying to record this video. I used to see my dead uncle when I was a year and a half old, back in '94 when he was killed by his best friend, quote unquote best friend. Now, let's try this story time again. For context, I was born February 10th, 1993. My uncle was killed September 27th, 1994 by his quote-unquote best friend because he didn't want to do what he wanted him to do, and he took his life and dumped his body not far from where my grandparents lived in what's called Westwood here in Memphis. Okay, more context. To be only a year and a half, I could speak in full sentences and call people by their full names. Okay. So, after my uncle was killed, funeral, everything happened, he used to come and visit me on Thursday nights at my parents' first townhome. Conveniently, my father worked Thursday nights, and he was not at home. So, he will only come and see me when my mom was there because I'm the only child. First time, I was in the room by myself, chilling, laughing, talking, hey, I love you, pick me up, play with me. And it was just me in there. My mom came in there and was like, baby, who you talking to? And I'm like, Gregory, you don't see him right there? Like, what are we missing? She was like, oh, okay. Terrified, that woman. She grabbed me, snatched me up, took me to the other room, locked the door, and hid under the covers the rest of the night. She was scared. So after a while, she got used to it because he came to visit me for about 3 to 4 months because we feel like he had unfinished business because his killer wasn't found for about, like I said, 3 to 4 months after he was killed. And once the day his killer was found, he stopped coming to see me. But he was my best friend for what my mom was telling me because I don't really remember him. I was so young. I was his best friend. He used to tell people I was his daughter. He carried my picture around in his wallet. Like, he was my person. I was his person. And it was my road dog. We would have been thick as thieves today. And I wish she would have lived. But oh well. Not oh well, but you can't change the course of history. So fast forward. Nobody on my dad's side believed my mom. But on my mom's side, we're all clairvoyant. We can see, we have visions, we feel presences. We're all touched. And I'm touched by an angel. I don't like it. I want to send it back because I don't want the type of gift. I'm scary. But oh well, these are the cards that God has dealt me. So fast forward. They didn't believe me until one day we were at my grandparents' house and I was in the den chilling by myself. Arms up, laughing, saying, I love you, I miss you, play with me. Because, hell, I didn't know he was dead. I hadn't seen him. I was like, what's up? I was like, hey, Unc. You know. So my mom was in the back room laying down. It was my dad, my uncle, my aunts, and my grandparents in the middle room peeping around the curtain like, who the fuck is she talking to? We are scared. Go get her mother. My grandmother went back to the back room and was like, Nita, that's my mom's nickname. Come get your baby. Something is wrong with her. My mom's freaking out like, what's wrong with my baby? And my grandma was like, oh, nothing. She's just talking to somebody that's not there. My mom was like, oh, it's just Greg. It's fine. She's fine. My grandmother was like, excuse me? What do you mean, Greg? You mean my son, Greg, who was killed months ago? How? What? So my mom got up to go to the den and get me because everybody else was terrified. And she was like, say bye-bye to Greg. I was like, bye-bye, Gregory. So during that time, she was like, Poo-Poo. She called me Poo-Poo when she was alive. That was my nickname. That was my nickname for her. She was like, Poo-Poo, ask Greg what he wants the next time you see him. I was like, okay. I'm gonna see him next week. Like, what you mean? So maybe a week or two passed, and I went back to my grandparents' house, and I told her, I was like, Momo is what I called her. Momo, Gregory wants you. And she was like, Poo-Poo, please tell Greg that I can't go with him right now, and that I love him, and that I will see him later. And I was like, okay. Soon after that, his killer was found. He stopped coming to see me. The man only did fucking 10 years in prison. Son of a bitch. But whatever. And he stopped coming to see me. Now he's resting peacefully. And my grandparents have passed, and now they're all together. So.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable, but is entirely true.
No, it's taken me a while to talk about any of this stuff just because it's so crazy and people make you feel crazy for, like, even believing in the supernatural. And I'm also a firm believer in the more you talk about things, the more stuff tends to happen. And if you know, you know. Now, I am like a teenager at the time, and my uncle moved from South Carolina and was staying with us for a little bit until he can like get his own place. And one thing about my uncle is he was involved in a very serious motorcycle accident to the point where both of his eardrums blew out and he was left completely deaf and had to go through years of physical therapy to be able to walk again. It's important for the story, I promise. Now, I'm a teenager at the time, and I know with this awful experience that he had, he does like believe to a certain extent in this kind of stuff from things that have happened to him after that. And I can't remember, but I was very emotional and I was upset about something that had happened. So instead of sleeping in my room, I decided to sleep on my grandpa's recliner that he had left us after he passed, because it just, you know, that's my poppy and he brought me comfort and was just trying to, you know, feel better. I didn't exactly have a home where I was comforted. So it's the middle of the night. I am falling asleep on this recliner. My uncle is asleep in the other bedroom. My mom, for I guess a kinder term would be, she parties, so she wasn't home. And I was literally about to fall asleep, and across the house, like it was like a little laundry room when you first walk into a garage, one of those types of houses, and the laundry room light turns on. Now again, it's the middle of the night, and I was just assuming that my mom was coming home from a binge or whatever she was doing and was waiting for her to walk through the door. Maybe she popped the light on so she can carry some stuff in. I don't know what she was doing, but nobody ever came in, and I didn't even hear the garage, and everything was starting to click with me. And the more I stare at it, the more paranoid that I start to get. I start to get this weird little, like, hairs on the back of my neck standing up sensation, and I'm just trying to rationalize to myself. I'm like, you're being weird, like it's fine, you fucking scaredy cat, you know. The dryer door like flies open, and it's just like such a loud bang, like, you know, it almost sounds like a door is just slamming, but instead it like flies open. When I tell you, I literally fucking I took off out of this recliner so fast that the recliner fell as I was fucking beelining for my uncle's bedroom. And I'm sitting there like knocking on the door, and I'm like, you stupid, he's deaf, he can't hear you knock on the door. So I just like fling open the door, and my uncle is just like in bed reading, and he's like, oh, what's going on? And, you know, even though my uncle is completely deaf, he can read lips very well at this point. And I start telling him as slowly as I can what happened, and he's just staring at me like with this intensity. And he, you know, my uncle's a great guy, I love him. He got up and he went, you know, into the living room and then through the kitchen to the laundry room, popped open the door, saw that the garage was closed, came back, and, you know, he sat there. He's like, I don't see, you know, anything to be concerned about. But I believe you, Tara, I believe you. And at this point, like, I've had these experiences at my home, a lot scarier than this. And my mom did not believe in any of that shit. She believes in angels, but she doesn't believe in the paranormal. Go figure. And he sits there and he tells me, he's like, look, I'm not trying to freak you out, but whatever this is, I don't think that it's good, or I don't think that it's a normal spirit. I think that it's probably malevolent, like evil. And I was so confused, because I was like, what? I'm like, it didn't attack me or anything like that. And he was like, no, but it's the fact that you are by yourself and it's intentionally trying to scare you. And I think the reason why it knows that it can scare you is because it knows that I can't hear it. Goosebumps. It knows that I can't hear it because I'm deaf. And my brain was just like, what? Like short circuiting. And he's like, you know, just come hang out with me for as long as you need to, like put a movie on or something with subtitle, and you know, go to sleep when you get really tired. So that's what we did. And I from what I remember, we put on Happy Gilmore, and I was just like chuckling to myself and laughing. And then I got tired enough and passed out in my room, and we really never brought it up again. I think he tried to talk to my mom about it, but she just was not willing to listen to it until she had her own stuff happen to her when I wasn't around. And then now all of a sudden it's real, right? Anyway, I have more stories like this, so some of them are funny and some of them are really freaky. So just let me know if
you want to hear some more.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8 years old...
Divas, hello! Hello, how are we? I'm back with another ghost story because I somehow involuntarily became a ghost stories account and I kind of am living for it. But also it's kind of creeping me out because some weird stuff's been happening with my phone. But yeah, so I'm gonna get right into it because I had one comment and they're like, geez, just get to the story. I was like, you're right, I'm a yapper. So I'm gonna listen to that. Constructive criticism. Let's do it. Okay. Antique cuckoo clock. Okay. So this story also takes place in Spain. I think my second most recent video. It's on my profile. Go look at it. It happened in Spain, and this was also in the city of Ronda. So I was there with my dance company. In high school, I was about 16, 17, and my mom was a chaperone there. There were a bunch of like school moms that were chaperones, and we were in this building that, if you didn't see my other part, was a hub for where the Spanish Inquisition started. It started on the site of the building. So this is the exact same building that all of the weird activity had happened in from me, and this was the morning before the big story happened. So my mom was upstairs in one of the bathrooms getting ready, and again, gonna preface, the only people in this building were the 30 girls and guys on this trip, and she knew what all of them looked like, and the moms, and like 2 staff members that opened the building for us. One was the director, and the other one was, I believe, a housekeeper that just hung out. I'm sure she was cleaning. I just mostly talked with her. But anyway, I digress. So my mom was up in the bathroom and she was washing her hands. And this woman came out of the stall and she was wearing this outfit that looked like a period outfit from like the 1600s. So my mom is upstairs and she is washing her hands and she sees this woman just come out of the stall, but like just appear. My mom was like, what? You know, this is so weird. And the woman starts talking to her in Spanish. And my mom spoke Spanish at the time because in high school I was fluent in Spanish. I took it really seriously and I taught my mom how to speak Spanish too. She also studied in college. And so they're talking in Spanish. And this woman is like, isn't it a really gorgeous day out? And my mom was like, actually, it's not. It's raining. And the woman's like, no, it's a really gorgeous day out. And my mom was like, okay. She just thought this was like really weird. And they talked, my mom said, probably about 15 minutes, like a decent amount of time. And the woman was just talking kind of weird and like a strange sort of way. Like she's like, oh, it was like an old timey way. And she was also dressed in like period clothing. And my mom's like, this is a historic city. There's got to be people that are like cosplaying around here or something like that. And I guess they wrapped it up and my mom went downstairs. There were a whole lot of staircases in this building. It was a very, very, very tall building. Again, it was a new building, if you haven't seen the first part, that was built on the foundations of a building from like the 1400s. That was the site of where the Inquisition started. And so my mom's like walking down all these staircases and she gets to the group and she's like, oh, wow, did you guys see that impersonator upstairs? And the curator of the theater museum, I can't remember exactly what the building was, but was like, what person was up there in like a period outfit? And my mom was like, the lady. And he's like, we don't have like cosplayers, reenactors or anything. This is they never come here. We're the only ones here. So mom was like, what? And then the day goes on. Nothing really happens. So my mom thinks this is very weird, but she's like, okay, keep in mind, this is 2 years or 2 to 4 years after that story happened on Mackinac Island, that stuff happened with my mom. So she doesn't mess with ghost stuff. So the day goes on, nothing happens. And then a bunch of the ladies are up in the bathroom and one of the women gets locked in the bathroom. One of the moms that were chaperones get locked in the bathroom, but it was a bathroom stall, floor to ceiling, doors that locked from the inside only. There was not an outside lock. and she starts freaking out. And one of the moms sees the lady that my mom saw, leaving the bathroom, and she wasn't in there before. And this chaperone is stuck in the bathroom for like 10 minutes, and then the woman comes back in to the bathroom, and the chaperone just happens to get unlocked. There were like 5 moms in the bathroom that all saw this happen, all saw the lady, and they had all been like, telling my mom, like, oh my God, you're crazy. Like, there's no way that this could have happened. And then she appeared to all of them, one of the dudes in Christmas Carol that appears at midnight. And they all see the woman. And then later that night I had my experience. And so, yeah, that building was very active. And we had no other experiences the rest of the trip. So, yeah. If you are interested in hearing more, let me know. I have a couple more stories, and yeah.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go.
So I've never found this scary, but anytime I mention it to my husband, he gets freaked out. No one from my childhood, none of my childhood friends will talk about it. So maybe it's scary to some people. When I was 7, my parents had my little brother, and they moved me from what was my bedroom to the guest bedroom. And my bedroom was connected to my brother's bedroom with a bathroom. So it was a Jack and Jill setup. And there was a long hallway next to both of our bedrooms. So when I first moved in to this new bedroom, the first thing that happened was at around 2 or 3 in the morning, the bathroom door would swing open, like slam open. The light would turn on in that bathroom, and I would see this big male figure kind of just standing there staring at me. Nothing happened. It would just stare at me. I would ask Dad. Definitely wasn't my dad because there was no response, completely silent, and then it would disappear. And this happened more than once until finally one night, I don't think I was scared. I think I was probably young enough to not be scared. I walked into the bathroom to follow it, and there was no one in there. And then things would just disappear. Just around my room, though, nowhere else. Like, I would leave something in my room and it would be gone. Homework, crayons, dolls, gone. One day, I woke up at night thinking that my childhood dog had gotten into my bed with me because I felt a indentation in my bed, and I look up and there's nothing there. But there is very obviously an indentation as though something was either sitting in my bed. I think I slept with my mom for a few nights after that one. The next big things I remember happening were when I was 16, I was hosting a group project, and there were a bunch of kids in my room. One of them was a boy who I wasn't friends with, but I never really liked him. I just had bad vibes from him, I guess. And I had one of those old Nickelodeon alarm clocks on my dresser in one corner of my bedroom. And, it was the kind that went like, nick, 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 Nickelodeon. And it was plugged in, it was fine. This boy was standing across my bedroom in the other corner, so probably a good 20 feet away. Anyway, that alarm clock unplugged itself from the wall. This is broad daylight. This is probably 3 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon. It unplugged itself from the wall, and it flew from my dresser to hit the wall next to this boy's head, maybe an inch away from his head. We all ran out of my bedroom. And then over the years, other little things happened, like my ceiling fan would start shaking violently, like it was going to fall, and I would just say, stop it, and it would stop. Or if I left, I was a guitarist, if I left my guitar out on a stand and didn't put it back in its case, the strings on my guitar would just start kind of going back and forth and back and forth. If we left any toys out that were battery operated in the hallway or anywhere in the hallway or my bedroom, they would just kind of start going, and you would hear them just kind of like going. I'm talking trains, RV cars, all those kinds of things. And this went on until I moved out, like just continuous. I would come and I would stay, you know, on college breaks and stuff, and it would happen again. I would lose things. My homework would go missing. The ceiling fan would do the violent shaky thing, and I would tell it to stop, and it would stop. So it was never scary to me. I think the ghost like watched me grow up, and because of that was never like mean to me. But I would love to find the people who bought my house and ask them like, hey, that third back bedroom, like, has anything creepy happened? Because it was really only condensed to that back bedroom and the hallway in front of my bedroom. So anyway, I have a million other stories about that bedroom, but those are kind of the top things.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
I'm going to try this for the 4th time. So, whenever I was 18 years old, so like over half my lifetime ago, I worked at Polyesters. Polyesters here in San Antonio, Texas, was a 3-story nightclub where the 3rd floor was 80s, 70s, or 2nd floor was 70s, 1st floor was whatever was hopping during that time frame. I worked on the 3rd floor in this particular night, and you know, after we shut down the 3rd floor, the patrons went to the 2nd floor, so I went to help for a little bit before going back up to do my cleanups and whatever. Once I went back up to the 3rd floor, you know, I finished cleaning up a little bit more of what I had to clean up. I was a cocktail waitress or shot girl, whatever. And nobody else was up there. But like when I stepped foot onto the 3rd floor, the lights started going off, like the disco lights, and then the like the different colored lights that you see in a club. They started going off, and then music started playing, and nobody was up there. I even was calling out to the DJ like, hey, it's not funny, whatever his name was. I was like, it's not funny. And nobody was up there. Nobody was responding to me whatsoever. I had to make sure the audio was working again before I went through the spiel. So anyway, where was I? Yes, so there was nobody up there. The lights were going off, everything else. So I was like, weird, very weird. And I proceeded to go into the little storage closet where we kept all of our timesheets and the clock in, clock out crap. So I went in, clocked out, and as I was going through towards the back stairwell, in my peripheral vision on my right side, I saw a man. And keep in mind, in that little corner next to the stairwell, it was like an L-shaped couch, and then there was mirrors for the walls by the dance floor, and then this particular sitting area. So the man was on the furthest part of the couch up against the mirrors, and I only saw from my peripheral vision. And I also saw, because I was still looking forward, so I saw it in the mirror. And as you may or may not know, mirrors that mirror each other are considered portals to spirits, to whatever else. But this man was very well dressed, like in early 1900s garb, maybe like 1920s, 1930s, 3-piece suit, brownish gray, beautiful hat, beautiful leather briefcase. And he was just standing there and just staring at me. And so I slowly looked, and he wasn't there anymore. So I thought, very weird. Maybe I'm just tired. It's 3 a.m. It's been a long day. I was a college student during the day and working at the bars at night to survive. So I took a few steps more towards the stairwell, and out of my peripheral vision again, I saw him. And I was like, okay, now I know I'm not hallucinating. Weird. So I darted down the stairwell, and on the flat part, like the landing between the 2nd and 3rd stories, it was always bone-chillingly cold for whatever reason. And then there was a picture of Jack Nicholson in The Shining, you know, like his little psychotic picture. And it just always was creepy there anyway. But I proceeded to go down. The 2nd floor had already closed by that time. And I went to the 3rd floor, and it was, again, already 3 a.m. So the bartender and the bar back were still cleaning up, and she must have heard me like just darting down the stairs, and she immediately says, "Oh, you saw him, like happy." I was like, "Saw who?" And she tells me, "Well, it's so and so." I think she nicknamed him like Tom or Jack or something or whatever. And she described the apparition to a T. I mean, the outfit he was wearing, the type of briefcase, the hat, everything. So I wasn't alone. In seeing him. Everybody else, or a lot of people, not everybody else, a lot of people had actually witnessed this person. So come to find out, I already knew, I apologize. I already knew that polyesters and that block along the Riverwalk in San Antonio was, it used to be the Nix Medical Center, or Nix Hospital, many decades ago. And apparently where we did our timesheets in that little storage, that used to be an elevator shaft, and it had since been closed down on like the second and first floors, and it was just converted in essence to a closet. Well, we come to find out that the man that we had seen was actually a doctor at the Nix Hospital, and he hung himself in the elevator shaft that we would go in every single day to clock in and clock out and keep stock. So that was pretty creepy. I had, interactions before that, but that one seemed a little surreal to me. And I've had many things happen since then. I know they say if you are very, if you're spiritual, you're more inclined to have these things happen to you, which is probably why this does in fact happen to me pretty often. I'm very sensitive to things, and I thank God for the gift of discernment and being able to hone in on certain things. But anyway, so that one was actually a true story. Very unfortunately, a very unfortunate incident. Polyesters has been closed for many years now. It has, flipped over time after time. And I think that place was actually cursed, because the owner of Polyesters, or maybe he was a manager, he actually, many years later, was murdered by an employee. I don't know if they're related, just with the ugliness that was in that building. But when I had heard that story, it just triggered for me that something must be in there that is just clouded. Anyway, it changed to the Kremlin, and then it changed to something else. I don't know what it is now, or if it's even open anymore, but hope you enjoyed.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
This is now my 5th time trying to tell this story, because the past 4 I've told this whole story and it gets deleted. I've tried multiple ways to save it and it's not working. So maybe that should be my sign I shouldn't even tell it, because I saw this trend yesterday and I waited until today so I wouldn't have to tell it at night, because it still freaks me out to even talk about it. But we'll give it a shot. Maybe I need to purge my system of this creepy experience. Okay, so about 12 years ago, I was living in a carriage house, and there was no forced air, central air, anything. It was just a couple window units. And one particular day, it was too hot to even bother with the air conditioning units. It was like dying of heat in there. So I decided not to sleep in the carriage house that night and drive to my parents' house and sleep in an air-conditioned bedroom. I'm the oldest of 3 kids, and we all were old enough to not be living at home anymore. So when I got home, I could sleep in any of the bedrooms that I wanted to. So I get back to my parents' house, and this is a house that had been built in the 80s or 90s, so not outwardly anything super creepy that you would think just by looking at it. And I get there, and it's a 4-split, so when you walk in, on the main level is the kitchen, little sunken in living room, and then upstairs is a couple bedrooms. Mine and my brother's bedroom was upstairs, along with a bathroom, and then my parents' bedroom. And then if you go the next level down, it's our main family room where we hang out and watch TV, a bathroom, laundry room, and then my younger sister's bedroom. Like I said, we were all out of the house by that point, so I could have stayed in any bedroom, and I decided to sleep in my sister's bedroom because that was going to be the coolest temperature room in the house. So it's bedtime, I'm laying in bed,
And the way it's set up is there's the bed, there's a nightstand to my left, and then it's the wall. So the bed is up against the wall. And on the nightstand is where the phone charger, where I'd put my phone. So at bedtime, I'm in bed, I'm texting with a guy that I had been seeing at the time, and said goodnight, put my phone on the nightstand, and then I roll over to face the wall. So the room would have been behind me. Excuse me. But I'm facing the wall. Oh my gosh. I can't start this over because I've tried so many times. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so I'm facing the wall, and as soon as I roll over, I feel a hand on my shoulder. Or pressure or something. It wasn't like the covers, like how cloth feels when it's brushing your skin. It was like something more firm. So I roll over and I feel this. I roll back over, confused, and there is a little girl standing right next to the bed, kind of like this. And it looked like hooded. It was really dark in there already, but this was like even more darkness. But something about it, I just knew it was like a little girl with like long hair, kind of just like that. Freaked me out, right? So I'm like blinking super hard, thinking I had fallen asleep. But when I looked later, the timestamp, there wasn't enough time to, it would not even have been a minute since I had rolled over. So definitely was not asleep. And blinking super hard. She's not going away. She's just standing there. And then so I'm pushing myself into the bed because I have nowhere to go. And she crawls on top of me and starts going like this on my chest. So I'm like getting like stabbed by a ghost knife or something. And then I scream, shoot out of bed. She's gone, run out of the room. And this is the same level where that our main family room is. And it was either my mom or my stepdad, maybe both of them were sitting there. I don't know, watching TV. Like, what's going on with you? I don't even know if I tried to explain to them what had happened or if I was just in shock. But I went back to bed to get my phone, mainly to go into the room to get my phone, just to check the timestamp, because like that must have been a nightmare. But it had only been like a minute, maybe even the same minute that would have happened by the time I got back to my phone. From me saying goodnight to me getting back to my phone, it was like 2 minutes. So in that whole 2 minutes, it was like rolling over, hand, roll over, stabbed by the knife of the ghost, run out, talk to my parents, come back. So it wasn't a dream. But the more time that has passed, the more you kind of don't trust that was an experience that you had. So yesterday when I saw this trend, I wanted to corroborate with anybody else who lived in that house whether they had creepy things happen, because I had other creepy things happen. But I texted my sister and asked, hey, random question, which really probably seems super random to her, but I'm like, hey, random question. In that house, did you ever have any paranormal experiences? And she's like, oh yeah, like casually. I was like, what happened? And so she's telling me the story about our dog who had died. His name was Chance. He was a yellow lab. After he died, my parents put his collar on the mantle of the fireplace. And that is in the family room, same level as my sister's room. So she had come out of her bedroom one day to get ready in the bathroom. So she's standing at the vanity getting ready, and behind her is the door into the bathroom, and behind her is like the living room, and that's where the mantle was of the fireplace. So when she actually, I don't know if she was standing at the bathroom or she was leaving her room to go into the bathroom to get ready at the vanity, but on her way somewhere in there, out of the corner of her eye, she like remembered that Chance's collar was sitting on the mantle. And windows closed, it wasn't like a gust of wind, but she said, oh, hey, Chance, and the collar flew off the mantle. Super creepy. So she's telling me this yesterday. I was like, wow, that's wild. And she's like, yeah, why are you asking about this? And I'm like, well, because there's this TikTok trend of people stitching their creepy experiences, and I had a creepy experience in that house, but I almost don't trust that it happened. And she's like, well, what happened? So I told her about the little girl that I saw who like stabbed me in her room, and was just telling her I saw this little girl in your room and it was really scary, and told her what happened. So she's like, oh yeah, I've seen her too. I'm like, are you serious? She's like, yeah, I would see her standing in my doorway sometimes. Oh, so as soon as she said that, I was like, okay, I guess I can tell the story because I'm not the only one. And this was 12 years ago that I even had that experience. She didn't tell me when she saw it, but it must have been when she was living in the house. So probably even longer than 12 years ago that it happened for her. But yeah. Creepy.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So when I was in college, I used to go ghost hunting with my friends using this like silly little phone app that we had. And we lived in Norman, and there was like an old abandoned asylum and like supposedly a haunted lake in Oklahoma City. So one night we went to this haunted lake, and the history is that there was like a witch that used to live there, and her cabin burned down with her inside of it. And there used to be a lot of like devil worship that went on down there. And so we decided one night we were going to take a big group of people. It was like 4 girls and 3 guys. And we were going to go to where her cabin used to be. And so this area is now private property, and I think it's maybe owned by the military. And so we jump the fence that leads to the road that supposedly like they used to do all the devil worship down there, and there was like where her cabin used to be. So we're walking, we get like maybe a quarter mile in, and the girls start to get really freaked out because we start hearing things in the bushes, and we start hearing like dogs like in the distance barking and howling. And I'm simply afraid that we're gonna get like shot by someone who works for the military. So we start like sprinting back to the entrance, and the boys keep going, but then something happened to them and they got super freaked out, and so they came back too. So we get over the fence, and while we were inside, someone took a like freshly dead calf and laid it at the entrance of the gate while we were inside. And I'm not sure if it was like someone playing a prank or if there was like some animal sacrifice going on, but it was really creepy.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So I have been seeing these videos all over my For You page, and every time I come across a stitch, I never skip it. Never. And if I can't watch it at the moment, I save it. I don't know what it is. I think it's my current fixation. But I was thinking, now's my time to share. Now is my time to share, because I have quite a few encounter stories. So I'm going to start. I think I should probably start all the way back to my dad's mom, my grandmother. I only remember seeing her, meeting her a few times. She died when I was really, really young. But I've heard through the grapevine, through other people, that she would dabble in some stuff, if you know what I mean. Like, she was into witchcraft, and I don't like to say it just because I don't like it, but yeah, she was into those types of things, like, you know, the boards, if you know what I mean, the board. And I think she was into that, but I just know that she dabbled in some of that stuff. So I said all that to say this. My dad was married before he married my mom. And so the house that they lived in, like my father's first marriage, the house that they lived in was the house that my father grew up in. So that means that my dad's mom lived there along with, you know, all of my dad's siblings and her husband. So I think that is the house where she used to, you know, do some stuff. I don't know. But anyway. And so from my dad's first marriage, he had 2 older daughters, which are my sisters. And so, like, sometimes whenever they were over, like, visiting their mom or whatever, we would go visit because, you know, we were also close with their mom. That's just how it was. So I would go to that house often. We would sleep there sometimes, me and my younger sister, and that's basically it. But even as a kid, I was like, there's something with this house. Like, I was scared to go to, like, the bathroom or like the bedrooms by myself. I don't know, it's just maybe I was a kid, like just being scared, like walking down a hallway. But now that I'm older and I'm realizing, I'm like, maybe it was just like my intuition that knew something was not right. Because it always did feel like a little weirded out in that house. Just like I did not like being in a room by myself in that house, if you know what I mean. Like if someone like left, if someone was sitting in the living room with me and they left, I was like following them, you know what I mean? Just little things like that. And personally for me, like I don't know exactly all the details of like what really like happened in that house. Like I don't know. I don't know like the deep history of that house. I wish I did. I need to ask my sisters. But I know that there was like some struggle in that house, like, if you know what I mean. I think like my dad grew up having a rough childhood, just things in that manner. But okay, this is the thing, I don't have any personally weird stories myself happening in that house. Like I said, I just felt like I could never go in a room by myself because I felt like there was something in there. Until one day in 2019, this didn't happen to me personally, but it was one day in 2019 where my sister's mom, so she still lives in the house, she had security cameras, and she caught something on her security cameras at like 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And it was what it looked like to be two little girls with long hair. They had black eyes, and they were sitting like near the carport, I guess you could say, like where they parked their cars. They were sitting there playing. Okay, let me just say, at that time, we did not have little kids in our family that would play. And they were outside playing at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they were, had black eyes and long hair, and it's just, okay. It's kind of confirming some suspicions here, if you know what I mean. I always felt very weirded out being there, and the fact that the security camera footage caught two little girls 3 o'clock in the morning playing, sitting outside, is just beyond me. And yes, I did see the footage myself whenever because like on the security cameras, like the footage only stays for I think like 2 weeks at a time, and then it deletes. So I saw the footage before it was deleted, but I'm pretty sure it has been saved to someone's phone. So I just texted my sister's mom, like not my mom, my other sister's mom. I just texted her, and I'm waiting for her response, because I pray she still has that footage, because I would like to see it, and I would like for you guys to maybe see it. But okay, so as far as my experiences in that house, like I said, I don't really have too much, but I have other experiences myself, where in my mom's house I've heard something talking to me, and so maybe I could share that. If you guys would be interested, just let me know.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So my dad died in the summer of 2003, in July, in fact, and in September of that year, we bought a house in my hometown, and almost immediately, very weird things began to happen. The first thing was I woke up very late at night, very early morning, one morning, and my closet light was on and the door was open, and my ex-husband was running down the hall in his underwear with a hammer, chasing something. I had no idea what was going on. Chased it to the front door, nothing there, totally panicked. When we all calmed down, come to find out he had observed the closet door open, the light come on, hangers flip out onto the floor, and in his half-sleep panic state, got up, grabbed the closest thing he could find, assuming it was an intruder, only to find that it was in fact not able to be seen. So very weird, very creeped out, but you know, what are you going to do? You just bought this new house, you got to live there. Shortly after that, we had my ex-brother and sister-in-law come with their newborn baby, came to spend the weekend. My ex-sister-in-law was changing the baby in my daughter's room and heard her call down the hall in this very panicked, someone come here right now. Like, you just know the tone is wrong. Grabbed the baby up, ran into the living room, and said she had seen something, but she did not want to share what she had seen, but totally freaked out and never stayed at our house anymore, which is troubling because that was my daughter's room, who was 5 years old. So after that, a series of events began to play out, and it was things like we would wake up at like 3 or 4 in the morning. We would all be wide awake, but nobody would know how or why we had been woken up. Lights coming on by themselves. There was an incident where we were in the kitchen and my ex-husband opened the cabinet and the plates sucked up to the top of the shelf where I kept the dishes, which plates are not supposed to defy gravity that way. So it was very, very strange. I had a curio cabinet that had belonged to my parents, and I kept a lot of memorabilia in it from my dad who had passed, and the little golden key that comes with it when you buy the curio had been missing for quite some time, years in fact, and one day just showed up completely out of nowhere inside the curio cabinet. So just a very weird series of things that was happening. And it escalated over time. It began to turn into I would get my hair pulled while I was sleeping, or we would hear random scratching. Became very unsettling, began to hear noises, see just some things out of the corner of your eye down the hallway. But had my cousin and his wife over one night. I'm telling them these things and I'm like, I know this is so crazy and you're never going to believe me, but listen to this. And we're all sitting around the living room and I start telling them all the things that are happening. And my cousin, as he's laughing it off, the remote control spins around on my end table and turns the TV off by itself, at which time they immediately excuse themselves from my home and are totally freaked out as well. But I think the height of what I call a haunting was my daughter, then probably about, I don't know, she would have been about 8 or 9. We were home alone that night. My ex-husband was working second shift, and we had a little dog that was barking, woke us up out of a dead sleep. And I was like, what in the world? I'm thinking someone is in the house. It shouldn't be here. But led me into the kitchen where the gas had been turned on the stove, and my home was filled with gas. No one there that would have done that. So credit to that little dog because she saved our lives that night. But after that, we contacted a local group who was at a local college. They were a paranormal investigation group. And they come and they did do an overnight. And they used all their cool scientific equipment, and they did EVPs and caught quite a bit of stuff, and brought it back just like you see on taps, and they presented it to us. There were some really creepy things from that, but more than that, their personal experiences were very strange. It seemed that the height of the activity revolved around my daughter's bedroom, so thought to be poltergeist activity, which is quite common in young females, apparently. So they did a house blessing on our home, and after that, things were relatively quiet. So that's my story.
Tell me about the weirdest dream you've had that you don't actually think was a dream at all.
Okay, so I have 3 stories that I'm going to share that are all dreams that I've had. And so I'll save the one for the end that's a little bit more happy, a little bit more bittersweet, because the first 2 are pretty creepy. And so if you saw my last videos where I stitched the same user about the ghost stories, it's going to seem a little even creepier because I'm in that same house sleeping every night that I mentioned in those ghost stories. So okay, so for my first story about my dream, just to let you know about the time frame, my dad passed, and so this dream I had was maybe a week or two after he passed, so I was still really deep in the grieving stage, really depressed, super sad. I mean, my emotions were all over the place. So this dream, it started off as, so I'm living in my parents' old house that they eventually moved out of to downsize to a smaller house. So I'm renting this house from my mom now. So it was set up differently whenever they lived there as opposed to where I have everything set up now. So we have a breakfast nook, a dining room, and then a very large living room, and they have a pool table. So the pool table was in the living room, and they decided to make their living room in the dining room, okay? And I have the living room set up like a living room, and I have the pool table shoved into that dining room. So that's how it's differently set up. So in my dream, I see my dad sitting on the couch, and it was set up like how they lived there. The couch was in the dining room, and he was just sitting there watching TV, and I ran up to him, and I said, I miss you so much. I wish you were here. I love you, you know, all of that stuff, everything that you wish you would have said to him before he left. You know, I was saying all those things, and he was like, well, you can come see me anytime you want. And I'm like, Dad, I know I can talk to you, but I can never see you again unless you visit me in my dreams. I know you're gone. And he's like, no, you don't get it. You can come see me. You can be with me again. You can be with me. And I was like, Dad, I don't understand. Like, I won't ever be with you again until I'm gone and I'm no longer here, and then we're in the same area again. Like, I'll never see you again. And he was like, no, you can kill yourself and you can be with me again. And I was like, I was kind of taken back. I was like, in my dream, I know everything that's going on. And I was sitting on the couch with my dad, okay? And so I stood up and I said, you're not my dad. My dad would never tell me that. You're not my dad. Who are you? And it stood up and it kept. So my dad, he was around like 5'11", maybe 6 foot, on a good day, we'll say. So he stood up and it started standing up higher and higher and higher, you know? And then it morphed into something darker, and I said, I'm waking up now, leave me alone, you need to get out of this house, leave me alone, don't ever come back, that kind of thing, okay? I screamed it, and I woke up, and everything was as it is now in my home. You know, I woke up, everything was in place, everything. I woke up at 3 o'clock. On the dot, 3 o'clock, and I was like freaking out, and I woke my husband up, and that's the end of that story. But how weird is that? So my second story, it also involves me being in a dream in my house, although it is set up how I have it set up now. And so in our breakfast nook, we have a very large dining room table that sits, you know, about 8 people. There's a leaf on it. It's very large. So I walk by that, and there's 2 windows next to that. And so I'm walking around, and I'm doing my, like, things that I'm doing before I go to bed, you know, like getting water, turning all the lights off, that kind of thing. And I see this old woman with long gray hair, wrinkle face, you know, standing outside of the dining room window, knocking on there, let me in, let me in, let me in. And again, I know what's going on in this dream, and I can kind of control it. And so I said, I'm not letting you in. You're not who you appear to be. You're not in need of help. Like, leave me alone. Don't ever come back. Stop knocking on my door. I will never let you in. That happened about 2 weeks after the first dream I just told you about. So I don't think these are dreams. I think something was trying to get to me. Because whenever you're depressed and you're mourning and you're grieving and all those things, you're very susceptible to things that want you. That's why I say I don't think that these were dreams at all. I think something was trying to come for me, because whenever I woke up at 3 o'clock again. So I don't think those were dreams. I don't know what it was, but I could control it. It was kind of like, if you've ever seen, what is that movie? With the dad and the boy. I think it's not the Annabelle series, but it's like those movies, you know, with those actors where the boy is asleep and he's in the other world and on the other side, and there's that red door and stuff like that. So that's what it kind of felt like, and I don't know how to explain it other than that, but super weird. And then here's my last story that's really bittersweet to me, and I do believe wholeheartedly it was my dad and my uncle that have both passed to come and say hi to me and, you know, talk with me and stuff. And this dream was a lot different than any dreams I've had before. It was kind of like a foggy, misty, hazy kind of dream where you could tell what's going on, but whenever you're looking around, it's like you're in a fog, but it's kind of more glittery, if that makes sense. It's not quite like a dense fog like what you would see driving on the roads or anything. It was like literal, like fairy dust sparkles kind of fog. I don't know how to explain it. It was really cool. But we were sitting at some sort of restaurant, and it seemed like it was just the table that was there. There was nothing else there. It was just the table, me sitting on one side, my dad sitting on the other side, my uncle that's also passed on the other side, them telling me stories like how they used to whenever they were alive, and, you know, all this stuff. And they just like stopped and they were like, you know, we really miss you and we're so proud of you, and I love you so much, and I'm sorry that we had to leave you, and all that stuff. And I'm freaking getting teary-eyed thinking about it again. But that was probably the best dream I've ever had in my life, and it was so worth it to be able to see them together again, happy, healthy, all of that. So whenever I woke up from that dream, I was obviously misty-eyed. I was crying. I was like, oh my God, I just had this wonderful experience with my dad and my uncle. I miss them so much, you know, and they came and visited me. You know, they visited me. This is awesome. I just had this overwhelming sense of calm and everything in me, and I just can't trade that for the world. And I'm not sure if it was a dream or if it was a visiting, but man, that was awesome. That was probably about 6 months after my dad passed, and I will hold that on in my heart and in my mind for the rest of my life, because that was truly amazing.